Does that start moving me towards the maximums? I mean, it's a start. It's more than where we started. But could I use this also for an opportunity, or can I only use it for costs? Right. It's my money, and that's what's important. You know, a lot of times people look at life insurance policy as this black box magical thing that, you know, we don't understand how it works. It works exactly like it should. We just need to understand what our position is with the life insurance contract. With a mutual life insurance carrier, I am an owner of my mutual fund life insurance company. I mean, it's really very similar. If I own stock in Coca-Cola, why does Coca-Cola pay me a dividend on my stock? Right, because I own Coca-Cola at some fractional piece, and when they distribute profits, as an owner, I get the profits. Okay, as an owner of a mutual life insurance company, as that company is profitable, I get the profits. And by law, with a mutual life insurance company, in order to stay mutual, they have to distribute the profits. Not necessarily in the year they were earned, because they're allowed to keep some retainings back to make sure that they can handle some of the ups and downs. But eventually, they have to distribute those profits. I get the profits as a whole life insurance policy owner of that company. That's why I get my dividend. But a big differential between that and Coke is, do I have to pay income tax on that dividend I get from the insurance company versus the dividend I get from Coca-Cola? And Nelson touched on a minute ago, another huge difference is, and clearly we don't know what the dividend is going to be with Coca-Cola, do we? But if I get paid that dividend from Coca-Cola, am I trained to take that in cash, or does it get just rolled into additional Coca-Cola stock? Typically. It gets rolled in additional Coca-Cola stock, right? I never see the dividend. All I get is the 1099, right? I just have to pay the money for it, but I don't get the money. It just gets rolled in and it buys more Coca-Cola stock. Okay, so let's say next year Coca-Cola has a terrible year and they lose money. What happened to the dividend I was paid the previous year that was rolled into Coca-Cola stock? I just lost value, didn't I? That cannot happen with a mutual life insurance company. So while the dividend is not guaranteed as to what it's going to be, once it's paid, it moves the floor in the cash values.
They can't repossess it, can they?
No, it can never go down. Once it's paid, it's guaranteed. Okay? There's nothing else out there like that. And I'll agree, the guarantees in a life insurance policy are fairly low, but tell me what else has a guarantee at all. What kind of guarantee would I get in my qualified plan? Or in my mutual fund? Or in my real estate? Or anything? Okay? So let's see what happens if we use our life insurance policy as collateral for an opportunity. And what happened here was we had a client that called us that had a policy, and the loan rate with this particular company was at 8%. And they called and they said, you know, we found a piece of property. We know it's a great deal. I'd like to see how good this deal is. But the second part is, you know, when we bought this policy through you guys, you talked about the fact that I could use these dollars as they built up in the policy for opportunities and investments that came along. How in the world could it make sense for me to borrow money from my insurance company at 8%? Okay, well, let's look and see. Maybe it doesn't. The property value in this situation, this was a $200,000 piece of property. $200,000 was the price of it. $5,000 in closing costs, no realtor fees. The land value was $35,000. That's important because I can't depreciate the land, only the structure on top. So it means I have a basis for depreciation of $165,000. And actually what they were going to do here, this individual had found a piece of property. He already had a renter for it. He just needed to build a warehouse. So it was going to be very low maintenance, and it was ready to go. Okay, the bank was willing to loan 80%, so $160,000. And they were charging 6.5%. Over 240 months. Property taxes were $200 a month, insurance was $200 a month, and he decided he was going to put $50 a month for maintenance. And again, that seems way out there because the maintenance could be off the charts. But in this situation, it was a brand new warehouse. There just wasn't going to be much there. His rental that he'd already negotiated was $2,600 a month. And his income tax bracket was 35%, 15% in capital gains. And this one's a little tricky. This is a depreciation recapture tax. You guys may not know what that is, but what it is, basically, whenever you've got a piece of real estate and you depreciate it over time, so you get to write off that depreciation. But when you sell it, if you sell it for more than you depreciated, you have to pay that differential back at a 25% tax rate. Okay, so there can be some advantage because you depreciated it maybe in a higher bracket and you deferred it to a tax in the future at a 25% rate. Okay, let's put in 60 months for the analysis. So we need a time frame. I don't want to put any appreciation yet. We could depreciate it because it's commercial property over 39 years. And let's say when we sold it, we had to pay 6% in sales fees. So at that point, we're looking at a 17% net after all taxes return. If it appreciated a little bit, like say 4%, then really we're looking at about a 25% net after tax rate of return. He was right. He found a pretty good piece of property, one that was very low maintenance and turned out a great net after tax return. How did we get to that number? If you'll get me a rate calculator. Okay, so the question first that I have for you is, how much did he put in it up front? Close. Close. 45,000. Because the closing costs and the 40, right? But you're right on track. Most people say, oh, 200,000. No. Remember, he was using OPM, wasn't he? So from his standpoint of his cost, he only put in the 45,000 because the bank's OPM, he's renting that money instead. All right. So 45,000 is the present value. Not 5, but 45. Yeah. Okay. He's getting $611 a month in net cash flow on average. Now, this calculator does it exactly month by month, but that number is going to change because of the change in write-off on the declining mortgage balance. So I can only get in the ballpark, but just so you can see where it's coming from. And he's going to cash out after all loans are paid off and everything else. In 60 months, it would be $80,686, which is 24.5. So again, I can only get that close based on what we're doing. Actually, change that to beginning, Kim, and that'll get closer. 24.79. So you agree with that? Looks good? Okay. So now let's look at the second part. The second part was, how in the world could I borrow money from my insurance company at 8% and have this make sense? Well, let's see. So if I borrow $40,000 from my insurance company instead of putting that in out of pocket, and they charge me 8%, and I do this, could I decide to pay this back over 240 months? Yeah, with a life insurance contract, I can pay it back on whatever schedule I want. I'm in control. I can skip a payment if I need to, as long as I've got enough cash standing behind it. So I decide I'm going to pay this back over the same 240 months, and look what happens to my rate of return. 105.52%. Now, I hope that some bells went off and you said, wait a second. That looks just a little bit too far out there. We better check into that. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I am saying we better look at it. So if we do that, how much am I putting in this deal? 5,000. My payment dropped from 611 down to only 364. So I reduced my income. And in the future, I don't have as much money. I only have 45,676. Over 60 months is 101. Again, I can only get close. So the number's correct. How could that be? Go ahead. It's actually, think about the first thing that we did and how banks make money. They took money at a low rate and they sublet it to somebody else at a higher rate. Isn't that effectively what we're doing here? When I went to my insurance company, I borrowed money from them at 8 and I sublet it into a real estate deal that was doing 25%. So if we look at that, for every $100 I get 8, or I pay 8, and for every $100 I get 25 per year. That's a 212% rate of return on that $40,000 portion. Now that's only on the 40. The other 160 is earning a mere 25%. So altogether, it does 105. So in understanding the power of cash and the power of being in position to be able to borrow an insurance company's cheap money to make our opportunities come alive, what is that?